What up, my fellow Dragodons? Dreadclaw here, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different here on the channel. We're going to be doing a tier list. Because why not? Tier lists are always rage these days, am I right? But this was also a way to something to show for people that are new to the channel my interest when it comes to franchises from Nintendo themselves, or even the franchises that are outsourced. But yeah, as well, I've always been more of a PlayStation person, but I always did grow up with both of them, including Microsoft with the Xbox, even though I would rarely use the Xbox. Legit story, only had mostly of it was third party. Same for the PS4 when it first came out. But yeah, just thought this would be cool, a little engaging with the new people here that just don't know me that well as far as my tastes go. Unless, of course, you've seen my streams of Pikmin, and you know I'm a big fan of the Pikmin series. Great franchise, been really enjoying Pikmin 4. But let's get into the tier list, yeah. So first off the bat is Advance Wars. Now, I've never played this series, but I do know it's developed by the same people that work on the Fire Emblem series, and I've seen it through those free catalog videos, catalog books, not videos. You usually see it stores like Toys R Us, Target, Walmart, basically any of the video game section in those stores. And I know there's a remake, which I definitely was interested in picking up. I will at some point. So I'm just gonna put it in the never played tier. Even though I have played a game called War Group, which is, from what I can tell, is very similar to Advance Wars, or those types of strategy games, if you're into those. It seemed pretty fun. But of course I've only played it because it was on Game Pass. But next on the list is Animal Crossing, which I wouldn't say is my favorite franchise. It's in between. It's I'm not really into Life Sims, but I somewhat like it. But for Animal Crossing, I'm probably just gonna put it in the D tier, just because from my experience, my first Animal Crossing game was, like most people, it was New Leaf on the 3DS. Where, of course, I never knew what the heck Animal Crossing even was until I got on Twitch and saw some people play, and I gave it a try, and I actually enjoyed it for what it was. And then after a few days, I just didn't really bother with it, and I saw villagers were angry, a bunch of weeds, and stuff were growing. I really enjoyed my time with New Leaf. Then, of course, I tried the other Animal Crossing games, which were the one for the GameCube, DS, and the one for the Wii, which those three generally felt the same, because it felt like the same layout, where you go in some vehicle, you go into a town, and then you owe Tom Nook money. It's pretty much felt the same, where New Leaf actually felt somewhat different. Same case for New Horizons, even though New Horizons I would consider more of the more overrated game of the series, where it didn't really have a lot of things that were good about New Leaf. But I did appreciate the fact that with New Horizons, you didn't have to deal with the customization where you had to pay bells and say, "You're cool," or some dumb phrase just to change your hair color or hairstyle. I don't know if that's just me, I generally thought that was one of the most stupidest things about Animal Crossing. But next, a franchise I'm very familiar with that I don't really consider a Nintendo franchise, since the first game started on the PS3 and Xbox 360, but Bayonetta, which I'm gonna probably put in B tier. Because I do like Bayonetta, and later on finding out that it was created by the people that made Devil May Cry, which is another series I really like. So, which also reminds me, I still need to finish Bayonetta 3, which I like more so for the combat. I just wish it was a bit more difficult. Even playing on the hardest difficulty, it's still somewhat easy. But yeah. Still a good series. I also still at some point need to check out Bayonetta Origins, which I played the demo, which I'm normally not a big puzzle person, so I definitely still liked it because it really reminded me a lot of Darksiders Genesis, which is similar in some style, but I think Bayonetta Origins definitely did the co-op aspect a lot better. But alrighty, next on the tier list is Donkey Kong, which all-time favorite, instant S tier. My first ever Donkey Kong game was DK64, which I know for most people, majority of the population despise the game, but for me, I generally liked the game. I didn't mind the backtracking in general. I say the only thing I didn't like about the game, going back 2 years later, was Diddy Kong's controls for the jetpack, and the fact you had to get those specific coins to fight King K. Rool. That is the only things I don't like about Donkey Kong 64. But in general, Donkey Kong is one of my favorite franchises from Nintendo, because it reminds me a lot of Crash Bandicoot. Always my favorites when it comes to DK, of course, Tropical Freeze. That's what really got me into the Donkey Kong series. And went back and played the older games, because generally, back when I was younger, I sucked at Donkey Kong Country, but years later, it's a really enjoyable game. Really good. Definitely recommend it for anybody that is a big fan of the Cash Banuka. And up next is Dr. Mario. Now, I've never really played Dr. Mario. I do know it's like akin to something like Tetris or... Actually, no wait, it is Tetris. I was about to say Puyo Puyo, but it's not really like that. So, I'm just gonna put in the never played and probably never will, just because it's something that doesn't really interest me that much, to be honest. Aside from Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, I've never really been much of a puzzle person. Oh, I have played Zuma, apparently that's a puzzle game. But also, next on the list is Fire Emblem. Now, this is a series I've only played one game out of, just because I was kind of curious about the Fire Emblem series, and of course, I do like me some RPGs. And especially after playing Mario + Rabbids Kingdom Battle, I was kind of curious to try out a tactical RPG. That's not Mario + Rabbids. For this, I'm probably just going to put in the C tier, just because I never finished Echoes, but for what I played, I definitely liked it. And my least favorite aspect, like Persona, the slice of life aspect, where that was aspect of Fire Emblem I didn't really care about, the relationship stuff. But for what it was, seemed like really good characters, the main characters especially. I wish the Celicia got into Smash Bros. Ultimate. I wish. It would have been cool, especially over Chrom. But, it's whatever. I did at one point get free houses, but I did trade it after I learned about Fire Emblem houses, free houses a little bit easier, and then when I heard Engage is in the same realm of difficulty, that's where I just kind of lost my interest in general with even really wanting to get into the series. But I can see where people are a big fan of the Fire Emblem series and how it's gotten popular. Even though in Smash Bros. They could use more variety in terms of movesets. But that's why I play as Corrin, because Corrin's the only interesting character from Fire Emblem. Alrighty, next is F-Zero, which I'm probably gonna put it in the A tier, because really good game. I've played the one for the GameCube. That was my first experience with the F-Zero series. I have played the first one on the SNES. Really challenging, very different compared to most racing games I've played. The only one I could think of was... I can't remember it now. I remember Sony had one, and there's like a collection they have for PS Plus. It's similar to F-Zero, where I hope they eventually bring back F-Zero, since a lot of niche Nintendo franchises have been getting a resurgence as of late. And plus, it would be neat to see with the GameCube remasters / ports happening, the F-Zero GX to Switch would have been really neat. Alright, time for... Speaking of niche franchises, next one is Golden Sun, which I'll put never played because... Never played it, but I have seen it was on the Wii U Virtual Console. it looks to be a series I would definitely want to get into, because more RPGs to look into from Nintendo. Yeah, that's all I can really say, because I have no exposure to the series. But I do hear really good things about Golden Sun. It's one of those franchises the fans have been wanting to see come back as well, so yeah. Kid Icarus is another really niche series, which I don't know how the 3DS game has not been ported to Switch yet. Especially when we have Yokai Watch 1 for Switch, Professor Layton, Snack World, Metopia. There was that sushi game, if I even remember that. And heck, we're even going to be getting Fantasy Life. Well, that's a new game, I should say. But Fantasy Life did originate from the 3DS, so I'm like, how the heck is Kid Icarus not there? Which was a game that it did interest me until I heard about the control scheme, where I feel like that definitely is more of a console game than a handheld game, especially if you're going to make it a very action-heavy oriented games. It should be on a console, not a handheld. But I understand, like, with the 3DS, it's more convenient and it does have, like, less resources to put into a game. Outside of that, my only experience with Kid Icarus was the first game on the NES, which, not gonna lie, wasn't the hugest fan of. It seems like an okay 2D platformer, but the thing that pissed me off the most was the fact that there's fall damage. It's like, you don't have that in Metroid, you don't have that in Donkey Kong, you don't have that in Rayman, you don't have, like, in any 2D platformer aside from Kid Icarus. Now in Castlevania, you do have that to extent if there's no platform underneath, once you go up in the levels, but it's hard for me because I don't want to put it in like a low tier just based upon my thoughts of the NES game, so I'm just putting the C tier just to make people happy, because if they ever decide to do a remaster or a remake of Uprising, I definitely would buy it day one. Alrighty, another franchise that I grew up with, but I've never been the biggest fan of, and that is Kirby. AKA, baby's first platform. It's a very kid-friendly, it's the most casual Nintendo franchise outside of Animal Crossing or... Oh, believe me, I got some words for another franchise that I see that's like on the bottom right. I have some words for that franchise. Kirby, I can see why people like it, so I'll just put it in the... it's like either D or C for me personally, so I'll just put it in D tier. But for me personally, Kirby I liked as a kid, but as I grew older, the Kirby games just don't interest me as much. Just because they feel a bit too samey. They are generally very easy, which, again, designed for kids. So I could see why people are into them, more so for, like, especially my mod, Yoshi Poyo, who really likes the lore of it. And plus, I do like the aspect with Kirby where he has the copy ability where he swallows things and he has some different powers and abilities. That I could see from a perspective why people like the Kirby series, which... alright, I'll put it in C, because, okay, you get that one, Internet, but... I still find it funny Forgotten Land has an easy mode, even though Kirby is beginner-friendly platformer. Why are you putting an easy mode in a game like that? Modern-day gaming laws. Alright, another series I'm actually into, Luigi's Mansion, which A tier. It's an A tier for me because I love the first one. It's still a really cool game. Even it's more so Resident Evil, but for kids. But as well, I'm a big horror person. I love me some horror. As of course, I haven't finished Luigi's Mansion 3, but I'm looking to make that a mission this year because I did get it I pre-ordered when it came out, but I had some internet issues when it came out, so fun times. And ever since then, I never really went back and finished it. I have, of course, finished the first one. I finished Dark Moon, which I think is okay. Like, if you were to compare it to the first one, especially now looking back on some other things that people don't like about Dark Moon, 3 definitely did things a lot better. Although I do appreciate, like, Dark Moon did have, like, at first the variety. Art style-wise, I like 3 and the first one more. And of course the portrait ghost. But definitely Dark Moon helped with the gameplay aspect. It definitely helped because gameplay-wise, Luigi's Mansion was okay. Dark Moon and 3 I liked more because it explored the whole incorporated new moves, new abilities. And this is weird, especially since I'm not really a big puzzle person. I more so say like puzzle games like Tetris or Puyo Puyo and stuff like that. But something like puzzle platformers or even stuff in the action-adventure games, I generally think they're fine. I can do those. But something like Puyo Puyo Tetris and such, that's just not my style. But what I liked when it came to Dark Moon, the puzzle aspect they had for that game, I definitely really liked. Same for Luigi's Mansion 3 with you did things with Luigi. That was a pretty cool idea to bring over from the remake for Luigi's Mansion on the 3DS. Oh yes, since we were talking about RPGs earlier, Mario & Luigi, which I admittedly never really played much of the series outside of Partners in Time, which was my first exposure to the series, which I know a lot of people don't like. And the only one I played outside of that was the remake for 3DS, Superstar Saga, which I know it's not like an impression on the original, but I didn't bother continuing outside of the tutorial because I did not like the unnecessary handholding. But I will put it under D tier just because. Just my impression with that. But at some point I would like to go back and finish Partners in Time because I don't know why people don't like that one. I generally think it's really cool with the Baby Mario and Baby Luigi. I like the whole going back from the past, the present, the evil shroom race. Not to mention there was like a big Yoshi in the Outer Space Wiggler. It's such a cool game. I don't get the hate for it. But let's talk more about the Mario. Yeah. Just not gonna say a single thing. Mario Kart. Overrated. I say that just because of somebody who's admittedly not the biggest fan of Mario. As well, when it comes to kart racers, Crash Team Racing Nitro is my game. I enjoy it more than Mario Kart. Mario Kart to me is just too simple. There's not much depth to it outside of spamming items. Where something like Crash Team Racing generally has more depth and skill to it with the drift and boost system. Where in Mario Kart, it's just not that interesting to me personally. But if you're a fan of Mario Kart, I appreciate it. Just saying. I always will prefer something like Crash Team Racing, Sonic Riders, or even Diddy Kong Racing. Which, if you could make a remake of that, that's not the DS version, that would be great. Although we always have Sonic and Sega All-Star Racing Transform, which is basically modern Diddy Kong Racing. And it's time for Mario Party! Man, there's a lot of Mario stuff. I'm gonna put this in the C tier just because I do like Mario Party. It's one of the few Mario games I did like growing up. My first exposure to it was Mario Party 3. And funny enough, that was my first ever Mario game, too. It's weird, because that was the same thing with Crash. My first ever Crash Bandicoot game was Crash Bash. I don't know what it is, those two franchises. The first game you were exposed to was the party game. But anyway, I played a lot of Mario Party 3 growing up, Mario Party 4, Mario Party 5, 6, 7, DS, 8. I played a demo of 9. I did not like it. Mario Party Top 100s, boring. But yeah, that's all I had when it came to Mario Party. Where my favorites were definitely Mario Party 3, 4, 7, 8, and DS. I did at one point get Mario Party 2, but I didn't really play it. I would have gotten Mario Party Superstars, but the thing that holds that game back for me is, well, the online and paying for Switch Online. As well, I do not like the fact that there is unnecessary hold handing when the game shows you how many spaces the star is. It's like, if I want to know where the star is, I could view the board. It's like, why does the game have to hold my hand in that degree? It's a party game. Why do you need to have hand holding? But again, just a me thing. If you're fine with that, more power to you. I just don't like the hand holding. Especially with 100% orange juice. They don't tell you how many spaces this freaking home is. I said home. Yeah. But alrighty, next on the subject, since I did bring up, you had to see that coming. But yeah, Mario in general, unless it is Paper Mario, Mario Party, I don't really care much for the Mario franchise. Especially when it comes to the 3D Marios, the 2D Marios, the Mario sports games. Just for me generally, I've never been much of a Mario person, just because Mario doesn't really have much what I liked when I grew up. Especially being a PlayStation person. And when we talked about Nintendo stuff, my favorite when it comes to Nintendo platformers has always been Donkey Kong and Metroid, because they have interesting worlds. They have some actual personality to their worlds as well, and to the characters as well. Actual story to them. That's just more a me thing, especially as well when it comes to platformers from the PlayStation, where you had stuff like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Sly Cooper, Ratchet & Clank, Jak and Daxter. Well, Big Planet. The list goes on as far as platformers that, to me, are generally more interesting Mario. I mean, heck, an indie game called A Hat in Time, which came out at the same time as Mario Odyssey, where A Hat in Time was a superior game because Odyssey was just bland and very uninteresting. Seriously, I don't know how people even like that game. Speaking of Metroid, though, what's next on the tier list? Instant S tier. Now, I didn't grow up with the Metroid series when I was younger. I did start trying to get into Metroid back in 2017 with the Samus Returns remake, which I admittedly didn't really like it at first. Like, I somewhat liked it, but I just never bothered to pick up again. I didn't get to the Metroidvania genre until later on when I played SteamWorld Dig 2, Ori, Hollow Knight. There even was that one random not Little Nightmares, Nightmare Before Christmas game for the Game Boy Advance, and I really got into Metroid in 2021 after the reveal of Metroid Dread. Even though I did play a bit of Metroid Prime back in 2018, I still wasn't really big on it as much until when Metroid Dread got revealed, and I binged through all the 2D Metroid games leading up to Dread. And even last year, I played through Metroid Prime from start to finish. And even Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, which became my second all-time favorite Metroid game, and where Metroid Dread is my all-time favorite in the Metroid series, and was also one of the reasons for the inspiration behind my username. Dreadclaw, even though it's more heavily inspired by the Monster Hunter series. But yeah, Donkey Kong used to be my all-time favorite. Then Metroid, after playing a lot more of the franchise, just how interesting it is. How much I love the exploration, which is usually my type of thing, especially when it came to the first Spyro the Dragon game, which I really liked about its level design. where it felt very rewarding in certain levels when you found out some secrets, when gliding over to some secret areas that you think at first you can't get across to, but yeah. And Metroid does that as well, with little hidden secrets, very rewarding gameplay. And especially Dread, I really love what they did with Dread. It's a fantastic game. And I just wait for whenever Metroid Prime 4 decides to release. But yeah. Moving on to the Mother series, where I played Earthbound, but I wasn't really into it. But it's another series where I can see why people... Why is there 2 Mother logos? I don't get that. But, I'll put it in the C tier just because I can see why people like it, even though I've never really got into it all that much. Next is one of my first RPGs I've ever played when I was a younger kid, Paper Mario. That's going to be in the B tip just because, why not? Also the fact of me I've only really played and liked the first 2 Paper Mario games. I've never played Super just because Super Paper Mario I've heard has a really good story to it, but I would never really play it just because it's a platformer. When I think Paper Mario, I think of a fun turn-based RPG with a little bit of platforming to it. Because, I mean, it's a Mario game, you need some platforming to it. As well, of course, later Paper Mario games just lack the charm and character that the first 3 Paper Mario games had. Because I have played Color Splash, where I think if they made it not have the similar combat that Sticker Star had, which I've seen from videos, I've never played Sticker Star, don't really care to try it. Because I did think it was at least with the paint, I thought that at least, like, to some degree made it more worth it to do battles. There was a reason you needed to fight, but at the same time, it didn't feel like you were losing paint since there were so many items around where you could just use your hammer on, your paint would get refilled anyway, so that just made it very pointless. Even Origami King, I was kind of interested at first, but then when I've watched some live streams of it, I generally lost interest at it. Especially the fact that you don't have experience points from battles, where, yeah, that just turned me off. And the fact they even half-assed the partnered system, which made me really like the Paper Mario games to begin with, because it felt like, okay, yes, they were the typical, oh yeah, this is a Bomb-Bomb, this is a Goomba, this is a Koopa Troopa. But they look different compared to what you would normally see from Koopas or Goombas and even Bomb-Bombs or Boos. They actually had personality to them, they actually had character and some backstory. They just didn't look like the ordinary Mario characters you would usually see. That's what I really liked about the Paper Mario series. Until then, of course, what we're in the current state of the Paper Mario franchise. But moving on, Pikmin, where I'm gonna put that in the A tier because Pikmin has never really had a bad game, just like Metroid. Except for, like, of course, Other M. I don't know if Federation Force is that bad, but here's some. It looks like an okay co-op shooter, but with Pikmin, it's only had like really one game that's like decent to a very generic 2D side-scroller puzzle platformer. That being Hey Pikmin, but I absolutely adore the Pikmin series. I grew up with on the GameCube, just like a few of the peoples out there that had the GameCube. I always seen the commercials for it, but I didn't own it until we got it from a local pawn store. But I always rented Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2. I never finished them, even though I still liked the series. I was really excited to finally play Pikmin 3 when they announced it for the Switch. And even Pikmin 4 is like my favorite Nintendo... Well, actually, I would say my second favorite Nintendo Switch game that released this year, because Pikmin 4 has some issues, but I would rather say those opinions once I finally finish the game and just make a video on it. But yeah, if I had to say though, I definitely still prefer Pikmin 3 the most out of all 4 of the games, because my order so far would be Pikmin 3, 4, 1, and then 2. And I liked about Pikmin 1 the most between the first 2 games on the GameCube. I liked about Pikmin was it's a very brutal game if you don't know what the heck you're doing. If you waste around with the time, if you don't know what you're doing, just not plan out what you're going to do for said day. Oh, Pikmin can be a very challenging game, and that's why I liked about Pikmin 1. Pikmin 2, I definitely go back to it and realize, oh, it's not really that easy. It's just more so the time management aspect. The fact, like, you don't have the 30-day time limit like you would think the sequel would have, but it's more geared towards difficulty of the caves, which are more or less dungeons, where those are the brutal aspects of Pikmin 2. Where Pikmin 3 for me it's my favorite just because it feels like a good mix of Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2 in terms of its time management, where it's not as stressful and anxiety-inducing like Pikmin 1 was, but it doesn't feel as relaxed with time management like Pikmin 2 is. That and also Pikmin 3 introduced us the Winged Pikmin and the Rock Pikmin, 2 of my favorites, although Rock are kinda outclassed by the Ice Pikmin at this point. But yeah. Alright. We're gonna have to get to this point at sooner or later. And for people that know me personally, yeah, it's going there because the franchise generally deserves it, because easily the worst franchise out there in terms of RPGs. But in all seriousness, why Pokemon is so in the trash can? Because for me, Pokemon isn't really that great of a franchise as people make it out to be. I generally consider Pokemon to be one of the most bland, uninteresting, too easy RPGs out there. Even though Pokemon typically doesn't feel like an RPG, and as well, just feels soulless, it's copy and pasting, just like Call of Duty, although between the two, COD actually has graphics. Pokemon in general looks like some overpriced mobile game that's just a rehash every time. As well, just what I mean when I say bland, that is also towards both the games themselves and generally the designs of the Pokemon themselves. But hey, you know, I could save all my thoughts and opinions on the franchise for a full video, but basically those are a few of my thoughts when it comes to Pokemon. As well, I generally find Pokemon's turn-based combat not that too appealing. It's just too basic, too simple for my taste. If you want to play a good monster taming RPG, just go play Yokai Watch, Monster Hunter Stories, Digimon, basically anything that's not Pokemon. I mean, heck, go play Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. That, in general, is better monster taming RPG than whatever Pokemon tries to do nowadays. Yeah. But next is Punch-Out, which I'm putting the never played, even though it does look like a neat series, but I don't know if boxing outside of arms is my thing. I think I've seen my mod GizmoCat play it, though. It does look like a neat series, because there are some personalities, I say more so when it comes to the enemies Lil Mac fights. I believe one of the bosses called King Hippo or something like that. I remember for the Wii one, you get to fight Donkey Kong, which is quite interesting. I mean, hey, if you're gonna add something new to a reboot, you might as well add some additional new content. And, you know, I speak about my mod Gizmo. Rhythm Heaven, which I've had low exposure to the series, but I know more of it just because of my friend GizmoCat. He talks about it, which I'm gonna put in the B tier, because I'm terrible at rhythm games, but I definitely really liked what I played of Rhythm Heaven. It's a really neat series. It's something I would check out, personally. But when I will do that, that's a good question. but I generally like it. It's very different compared to a lot of rhythm games out there. It's not like Parappa the Rapper, it's not like Guitar Hero or Rock Band. It's more visual. It's not about like pressing it like XXX or stuff like that. Yeah. Although it looks graphically very simple, but I mean, for a rhythm game, I don't feel like that's the main appeal of the graphics at all. It's more about the gameplay and the music itself. But alrighty. Oh, Smash Bros. Yeah, I feel like this is gonna trigger some people out there, but Smash Bros. To me is just kind of overrated. As far as in terms of like fighting games, I get the appeal when it comes to Super Smash Bros. It's not like your typical fighting game. It doesn't have like a lot of combos, or it's very more simple. It's a more party game oriented fighting game, which spawned its own little subgenre called platform fighters, which we saw from Brawlhalla, Multiverses, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, which that's in a sequel. Possibly gonna check that out. And even Rivals of Eight there. That's another one that I'm looking forward to next year. Check it out at some point. But of course, when it comes to Super Smash Bros., it's more so overrated just because it's one of those things that people hype up. Which I get, because it's this gigantic video game crossover. You have so many characters you would never seen in a Nintendo game. Like, you have Mario and Sonic, you have the likes of Castlevania, you have King K. Rool, you have this... You have Sora, you have Banjo-Kazooie, you have Dragon Quest, you have Joker from Persona. I mean, I get the appeal of it because it's a big crossover of the video games. But for someone like me who's more of a traditional fighting game, I think it's okay, personally. I think it's more so overhyped, more so than overrated. But we're going to keep it in the overrated tier because... why not? Then also, Super Smash Bros. Has easily the worst when it comes to its netcode. Even though I hear Super Smash Bros. 4 has much better netcode, but I play on the 3DS, and I could say no, it does not. But alright, next is a series I somewhat like, but I wouldn't say I like as much nowadays, Splatoon, which we're gonna put in the C tier. I say more so just because of the events of Splatoon 3. To me, when lead up to Splatoon 3, it's like, does this game actually need to exist? Personally, I still stand by it. I say they should have just waited until the next Nintendo console to release Splatoon 3, because going from Splatoon 2 to Splatoon 3, it generally feels like what Splatoon 2 should have been to begin with. I do plan at some point to play the single player, because that's the only aspect I haven't played of Splatoon 3, because I only played, when I got it, I played the multiplayer and Samurai, which Samurai feels more refined, a lot better compared to Splatoon 2, and the fact that in Splatoon 3 they don't have a day or a time limit to where you can actually play Samurai, which is still some of the most stupidest thing of bullshit I've ever heard of. That's like if Call of Duty said, oh, you can't play zombies on said day or time. No, you can't do that, where that just feels idiotic. But Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 1, generally the Splatoon series, I give Nintendo credit for doing some kind of shooter in some shape and form that's very unique compared to the most saturated genre out there besides open world games. Yeah. And generally, even though I'm not a big Splatoon person like I am nowadays, back then Splatoon was just such a fun game. Such unique, just like my time with Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. Overall, a really cool franchise. But up next is, we always talk about those niche franchises from Nintendo, Star Fox, which I'm gonna probably put it in C tier, just because I haven't played much of the Star Fox series outside of the two Star Fox teams on the GameCube, and Star Fox Zero, which I do regret getting because I got it while I was in New York, so that was fun. I did see some friends play it at first. I wasn't sure what was going on, but then when I played, I was understanding why they weren't really liking Zero that much. Well, of course, weird control scheme. What were you expecting? That just feels like the Wii U era in general when it comes to just bad design choices. But if Star Fox was to come back, it generally feel like there could be potential. After all, look at Metroid and all the other niche, obscure franchises Nintendo typically makes, where they're actually doing very well. That, of course, is on a more successful console. And as well, if they were to do another rehash of Star Fox 64, okay, but then afterwards, do something new with the franchise, because at least the ones for the GameCube actually had some decent ideas. I mean, heck, one of them was more like The Legend of Zelda, but I think it generally is much more interesting compared to The Legend of Zelda, at least from a gameplay perspective. Yeah. And Legend of Starfield, which I know is created by the same people that make Kirby, but I've never played it. I just know there was a game with the DS, and the character was in Smash Bros. As a assist trophy. That's all they have to say about Legend of Starfield. I didn't know that was a Nintendo franchise. But, WarioWare, which I'll put as well, never played because the games generally never really interest me that much. The only thing from Wario I have played is Wario Land 4, a little bit of it, and I have played Wario World from the GameCube, where WarioWare I feel like has more personality towards it when it comes to its characters. But I'm not really interested in the little minigame compilation stuff. If they were to make a new Wario Land, that would be cool. That would be awesome. But, yeah, never played, just doesn't really appeal to me. But if you are a fan of WarioWare, I can see somewhat of the appeal for that series. As well as a series that doesn't really appeal to me all that much, Xenoblade Chronicles, which I'm gonna put in the, yeah, let's put it in the seeds here, because I could still at least like Xenoblade Chronicles to an extent, because I like the characters, the music, the soundtracks in general for Xenoblade is really good. Graphically, it looks decent, but it could just be a thing with the Switch. Even when playing on handheld mode for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torn of the Golden Country, it did look a bit blurry. So, the fact that Monolith Soft can even put out something big on that spectrum is really cool. But the more so thing for Xenoblade that's a more turn off for me personally is just the combat, where it feels more like a single player MMO, where I wish it was actual, like, action-based combat, kind of something like Final Fantasy 16, or even, well, turn-based. Or even probably the closest thing I would probably want would be something akin to Chrono Trigger. So, yeah, that's the only thing I don't like about Xenoblade Chronicles is just the combat. I've never been the biggest fan of MMORPGs in that regard either, so yeah, but I can again see the appeal of the franchise for people. Next is Yoshi, which I'm more likely going to put in the D tier because, yeah, Yoshi games are not really my thing, just like Kirby, where it's a very more kid-friendly platformer. But it does have some nice music though, so that's why it's going to D tier, just because it has some nice music, but not really my thing. So yeah, that's all I really have to say to it. Zelda, which this one is hard because I kind of put in the overrated tier, but I'm not going to put in the trash tier because Zelda has more effort put into it compared to anything Game Freak could ever do. Which, yeah, let's just put it in the overrated tier. With Zelda, it's weird, complicated relationship, where I like it more so with Zelda. I like more so when it comes to the world of it. I think it has more interesting stuff compared to the Mario franchise, where it has this interesting stories to it, the races of Hyrule, the hero of time. All that stuff is really neat to me, but I never was big into Zelda just because of, like, Zelda's dungeon design, where I find more appealing stuff like Okami, Darksiders, Immortals Phoenix Rising, games like that, even though my most anticipated indie game is Midna the Hauler. Yeah. And plus, I have tried Zelda where I did somewhat like Breath of the Wild. I didn't get Tears of the Kingdom just because it did fix some things I didn't like about Breath of the Wild, but I still was not interested in. Plus, $70 for a slightly upgraded version of Breath of the Wild that's more so expansion. Yeah, no. I tried Link's Awakening, never finished it. I tried Majora's Mask, where I liked the atmosphere of it. It seemed more interesting compared to Ocarina of Time, which I did have Ocarina of Time as a kid. I got it the same day as my parents got me Croc, Legend of Gobos. But I definitely played more Croc than Zelda. That one I remember I played was, I think it was Link Between Worlds? It was the one for the 3DS that was a sequel to A Link to the Past. The only one I really liked, I was more so because my friend had it, I was at his house playing it, Four Swords Adventure, which I'm surprised that never got a remake for the for Switch, because that would be such a cool game to have. Especially with the thing when Square did a remaster for Crystal Chronicles. So it just seems kind of odd the fact they never did a remake or anything, but yeah, that's just my general thoughts on Zelda. It's like, I think it's somewhat overrated, but I don't think it's as overrated as like the Mario franchise. Because at least it has the interesting world and story going for it. For me at least. But lastly is ARMS. That game that most people just say is, oh, it's that game we get to play before Splatoon 2 comes out. And I'm gonna put it in the B tier because ARMS, for me, I really liked the first one. I do agree it wasn't worth the $60 at launch, because it's definitely very light on content. But the time when they put out all the free updates and stuff, I generally feel like it's somewhat worth the $60, but I don't know what the player base is like. I did as well like ARMS just because it had so much personality going for it. It has that very Overwatch feel to it with the fighters. Even though it was more so like boxing, because honestly, when it comes to ARMS and Punch-Out, I definitely like ARMS a lot more. There was more character to it. And it's one of those games for the next Nintendo console. I hope they make us. They're definitely gonna have a sequel for it, because I feel like there's definitely a lot of potential they can do to expand the world of ARMS. And hopefully have more content at launch, because that, again, is what I feel like definitely shot ARMS in the foot. Is the whole, oh, we're gonna release it now, and we'll add more stuff later business model that Nintendo's been doing with the Switch. Yeah, that doesn't work for ARMS, especially when it's a new IP. And honestly, I still think they should have put Lil Mac in ARMS, because he generally feels like he's a character that fits. But I understand from the developer, the director didn't include any other Nintendo characters, like, at all. It just wanted its own universe. And maybe one of the few people that were excited to see Min Min add to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Because, cool character, yeah. Even though there were definitely other fighters I think would have been more interesting put in. But Min Min is a pretty interesting character. But I say that as someone who's not a Min Min main, but I've played a few of Min Min. Yeah, guys, that is the tier list video. If you have if you want to make your own tier list, the link to it will be down in the description below. But let me know your thoughts. What Nintendo franchise are you into? Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you guys in the next video.